It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. The guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
All right, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcasted from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand, Aotearoa, episode 91 with Darren Watson, who I'll speak fondly of, who I'll fondly fondle of gently in a second. I'm not going to stop this take. That's staying in, odd as it is. Who I'll fondly fondle in a second, for an hour and 10 minutes. I have anxiety. Anxiety is a running theme through this podcast episode, but not in a way to, project one's anxiety or the guest's anxiety onto you fellas and fellesses, but more a constructive conversation around different ways that anxiety is manifesting for a lot of us globally, and also how it manifests personally. So Darren's new album is called Getting Sober for the End of the World. Hopefully you can pick a number of threads where anxiety runs through that one. My anxiety has been very high of late, and it is not typical for me that it feels so overt, though it does occur to me the more I learn about myself and the people around me, and as we get older and speak more frankly about ourselves, this is happening with me, say with this episode, and with a couple of close friends of mine lately telling me more perhaps than they would have in the past. I think because they understand themselves more. I think that I don't know really what a life is like without anxiety. But yeah, State of the World makes it a little worse. I watched, this relates to this, I watched there's a new documentary on Netflix called Challenge of the Final Flight. Now, I must have gone down a rabbit hole learning about this tragic incident that I remember seeing on the television in 1986, the Phillips K9, Matai Road, Hokkaido, my grandmother and grandfather's house. I remember seeing that poor teacher and those other astronauts go up into the sky and then poof. But one thing that really stuck out to me, aside from people quite upliftingly yelling "America" as it took off, rather than angrily going "America" like they seem to do these days, is no one listened to the experts. 34 years, let's call it 35 years ago, no one listened to the experts. Listen to the experts. It's part of my anxiety today is just that, people not listening to experts. My guest is an expert musician, expert thinker, and funnily enough, I think that, it's funny, you form these kind of kindred, if you have someone who's a kindred spirit, I think that seeing Darren again made me realise that we don't kind of change a lot, even through the kind of sands of time and even maturity and aging. The reason I say maturing is because Darren was in a very well-known and very successful band in Wellington from 85 to about 1990, early 90s, and then I met him just after, and I was young, man. I was 14, 15, 16 at best, coming after school from Wellington High School into the music shop in town, Kingsley Smith, and Darren was the cool music shop guy, but also the cool music shop guy that I had an affinity with, that I had a similar sense of humour with, that I wouldn't have been able to articulate then, but I realise now that I obviously share a lot of the same kind of values and outlook with. Darren is touring in October. There's details at the end of the show, but you can go to Darren Watson, DARREN WATSON.com and have a look at that, and also the new album, which drops October 1st. Yeah, the Challenger, 86, the same year as Chernobyl. What a year! And what else struck me before all this doom and gloom is what a different world we're in at the time. Because just watch that doco alone for the footage of just the general public around that. It's not how people are looking and behaving in modern America, that's for sure, and increasingly here. That one of the nut bar protests that I had down the road from me here, the anti-lockdown protests that had a mixture of kind of like American flags and kind of almost like white pridey looking flags. There's sort of obviously a mix of crazy internet down there at Aotea Square. That was about 4 weeks ago from memory, maybe 5 weeks. And then there was one that had exponentially grown in the same spot about a week ago that made me think about the rate in which that kind of poor information-driven dissent is growing. Babbly, 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 babbly. Goodness, we talk a lot on the show about a lot of things. I really pushed Darren because there was a lot to cover, and so it's got a bit of a live radio energy to it, but it also has a nice weight and depth of ideas and food for thought and honesty in it. You can go and listen to the rest of my shows on Verbal Highs or at verbalhighs.com. Verbal Highs Podcast, please like that on Facebook. Verbal Highs on Twitter. And also you can subscribe on iTunes, and if you can leave feedback and a comment, that is a real help. I don't really get a lot of feedback for this passion project, but it helps other people find it.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs. It was like basically a concrete box. Was that me or you?
Oh my goodness.
That was you again. You shocker.
It's a reminder that you're coming.
I love it.
Verbal high straight down from up above.
Darren, why are you up here in Auckland this weekend if the tour is next weekend?
Well, the tour is actually a couple of weekends away. We start on the 1st of October. I'm here because I could get flights. And it kind of worked out that way.
You're here for something in January next year?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so I just thought I'd do, 3 or 4 days of everything in Auckland while I was up here.
But kind of half like music industry stuff and half catching up with people and stuff like that.
Catching up. I'm catching up with my mate Trevor Riki, but that's a double up with industry stuff. But as it tends to be when you
but your mates as well,
friends,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's how it tends to work. So yeah, man, I'm just, and I thought I'd come up for the extra added COVID risk. I thought it was thrilling.
That's right. You and I gave each other what's the word? Is it food? What's the word? We gave each other sort of sideways glances in our matching blue masks and didn't shake hands.
Yeah, and it was an interesting walking around and seeing how many people aren't kind of wearing the masks too, which is.
It's I've thought about this a lot. I don't know whether what I think about it is necessarily correct, but I think they probably left it for quite a while, kind of telling us, "Oh, you should," because it's quite a PR. You know what I mean? It's quite a PR manoeuvre.
Oh, of course,
because it has a whole lot of connotations to it.
I know.
But to what you're saying, I've noticed that a lot of people who normally wouldn't were really good about it for about a week or two.
Yeah.
And it stopped. But in places like supermarkets, it's still happening. So
that's right. I think a lot of people are tending to pop them on when they go inside or whatever. So that's fine. But it was just, even last night getting dinner, I realised a lot of people going into places without masking, without signing in.
God.
And it's just...
It's full on, eh?
It is. I mean, the whole thing's really scary, and I get that people would rather just kind of pretend it's not there somehow.
You guys haven't had a second lockdown, eh?
No, we're at 2, which is a little more relaxed than here. So.
Because I had I'm not prone to anxiety, so it's been a really weird year because I've been a little bit quite anxious this year.
Yeah.
But the second
Welcome to my world, buddy.
Oh, you got it.
I've got it bad.
The second lockdown kind of, even though it was shorter, I had a few moments where it was kind of panic. And then I heard someone on the radio saying there's been extensive writing for decades about the different stages of reacting to a crisis.
Yeah.
And I was textbook, whatever it was. Let's not talk about the Rona.
No, because of course people listening in a year are going to be going, why are they still talking about that?
Yeah, because they're still sitting there in lockdown with their masks on.
Yeah.
I'll start with the name of your album. You're getting sober for the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like I'm cashing in on the COVID crisis. I've had that a couple of times from people. What happened is I got sober. I quit drinking.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was mucking around with the song, and the phrase "getting sober" kept coming into my. And then a week later, I was just thinking about my grandkids, because I've got grandkids now. I'm an old fella. And
I heard you say that on another podcast. I looked at your age. You must have had kids when you were 18 or something.
Yeah, I was 19 when Riley was born. So I was just naturally thinking about that, and then the end of the world phrase stuck in my head, and for some reason I put them together, and I thought, that's just great. It's just like Wile E. Coyote finally gets the Roadrunner and the 16-ton weight hits them both and kills them, you know? And so I just like the idea of puns like that. And so it became a song, and it's kind of, it's serious, but it's also not. I mean, it can be both. You know,
I noticed that with the whole album I listened through, and it's like it's a serious album with a serious message, but it isn't a sort of a deep. I mean, actually, sorry, that sounds like that's not what you want to hear as an artist. It's got depth, but there is a frivolity to it.
Of course, there is. You've got to laugh at this shit.
But what I really like about that title, also, and I know you're a considered guy outside of just the raw music, is it's got a lot of layers to it. Like, there is arguably a whole lot of reasons whether or not you did in fact yourself get sober to get sober for the end of the world.
Well, that's right.
So you can better kill the zombies.
Yeah, because exactly, man. And getting sober, I mean, sober means more than just stopping drinking. It's like,
totally.
You think about, the whole world needs to kind of wise up and sort its shit out and systemically... capitalism. Oh, let's start in politics.
See, I love this. No, this is great. There's so many forks to this, because what you're saying there is something a train I wouldn't even followed. But yes, I have thought, why is alcohol an essential service in a lot of Western countries?
Yeah.
Arguably New Zealand being a nation of functioning alcoholics.
That's right. Well, exactly. I mean, religion isn't the opiate of the masses anymore. No. Alcohol and drugs are. Yeah. So, and you have to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that there are some real ones, like the oil industry has been colluding with government for years to keep.
So just paraphrasing that, you know how to sort good research and good sources from bad.
Yeah. And so that's what was on my mind when I wrote the song. But I wanted it to be funny as well, because it's got to be an into that stuff.
Yeah.
So, so people think about it as a funny thing first.
I like that in the video, that it is humorous, but it's not. It's very nice and sort of low key.
That's funny, because the real humour of that video is, I shot that under lockdown, so I had to do it myself with my phone and stuff, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. And I didn't have the bit with the electric guitar character until right at the end, and that's kind of made it. And it's so often the way, and same with the album actually, because we were going to release this in May, and we couldn't, obviously, for obvious reasons. And in the meantime, I wrote 2 of the other songs on the record. So everything happens for a reason, and it's like I've really enjoyed the whole actually lockdown, apart from the anxiety. But I live like that every day.
No, you're right. Glass half full. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm a radio guy background wise, and I took that to Facebook, and I didn't particularly like staring into the camera. That was the worst part, but it was a way to. I was like, what can I do here to connect with people for my own benefit as well as theirs?
Well, at the end of the day, whatever we do, we probably do it first and foremost for ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like, if I wanted to make money, the last thing I'd be doing is what I'm doing, which is, teaching guitar and playing music. And but I do it because I can't not do it.
Yeah, but your audience needs you, and you need your audience.
Well, that's the thing, and I found the great thing about the modern paradigm of the digital world that we're in is that when you can get a community happening, the people are loyal. Unless you're Judith Collins and you're buying $30,000 worth of likes, of course. But the people stick with you.
Don't get your national agents onto the show, mate. I don't need this thing monitored. Okay.
Yeah. So
we'll get to that later.
I really enjoy being able to do what I do and knowing that there's kind of an audience for it.
Yeah.
Even though it's not. It's a selective audience, as they say on Spinal Tap.
It's boutique.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a boutique.
So, but I'm happy with that. It's like it's enough to get out and play it and write an album every couple of years.
It's the model these days, man.
Yeah, that's it.
Before that, you were never from a kind of chart style or sound or background anyway. So with the getting sober, I figure because it's part of the album title that you're prepared to be very public about it, and I think that's really great, because I think part of the issue with kind of addiction and mental health and stuff is it's been a taboo thing to kind of talk about for years.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a reason that, say for example, AA was a secret society years ago, but that seems like a sort of a dated concept now. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and genuine interest, and also to hopefully help someone else or whatever, have people relate.
Good.
Did you go cold turkey, or are you doing the thing, or are you going to a counsellor?
I'm lucky enough that I don't think I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But because of my anxiety, which was undiagnosed for decades, I was self-medicating.
Yeah.
And so I realised at one point that I hadn't gone and done a gig sober in 35 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then just looking back and realising that every time I completely fucked up in my life, it was always the alcohol involved.
Yep.
Now, I'm not blaming the alcohol.
Yeah.
I was obviously using it.
I hear you.
You know.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where plus I was diagnosed with diabetes, so I was immensely overweight.
Were you not a good diet person either?
No, I was
okay.
135 kilos 2 years ago. I got really big.
You're looking well.
I'm much better. I'm under 100 for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I had that added impetus of like not dying.
It's a motivator.
Yeah, and man, when I stopped like the amount of sugar and booze and stuff, I immediately dropped like 20 kilos.
Yeah.
And man, did I feel better.
But are you, if I don't mind me asking, are you doing anything like CADS, or are you just like sticking with people like Ben, who's been sober for years?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't need.
I'm not prescribed.
No. For me, what really got me motivated was I hate being owned by things.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out that alcohol had owned me for most of my life, and I just, and I'm probably not the kind of person who's going to beat myself up if I get tempted by a single malt once every couple of years.
And also, if you go get completely spanned one night unintentionally, you can't let that ruin your next year
but
either.
You know what? I genuinely don't think that's going to happen, because when you're a diabetic, if you're having a bad day, it's like the worst hangover anyway. You don't want to add alcohol to that.
It's sort of like, I'm not saying, you got diabetes and made you give up liquor, but what a great kind of motivator, but
Absolutely.
also like kind of guard in place for you to go, well, it makes me feel...
Yeah, and having grandkids, man.
Yeah.
And like, it's that buzz of when you first have a kid, you're like, I've got to look after this thing that I've made, this person, this human being. And then when they make other little human beings, it's like, it reinforces it. It really does. I know it sounds corny and it sounds Hallmark or whatever, but it changed how I thought about everything, really.
Yeah. Probably cleared your thoughts a little.
Yeah, and
got
me thinking less about myself first.
I heard you say that about teaching, and I so agree. I as I got older, thankfully, because the ones who don't are the real worry, I had realised that that ego you have in your 20s was dissipating. Yeah. But it was teaching that made me really go, fuck, I've got all this stuff to give. I don't have to focus all of that into getting my jollies anymore.
Yeah.
It can be saying to someone else, hey, this is how you do the thing, man.
Yeah.
I really loved hearing you say that, because then you start to learn more about a whole lot of stuff as well.
And that's 90% of my income now is from teaching, although COVID has obviously affected that.
I'm a happier person overall since I've been teaching.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You see the light go on for people, and it's like, oh man, I wish I could be that again. When the light went on.
Something else you said. Simon's probably listening to this and he's realising that I'm just riffing off points that came off those podcasts. But they were a very good source of information, Simon. You were very thorough. You brought back home, or paraphrased, something that I kind of knew about my foray into learning an instrument.
Yeah.
To the letter. Because this is what happened. And the funny thing is, because Wellington is so small, I Googled this man this morning because I thought I better not say who it was. Mm-hmm. He had the best intentions. It turns out he still teaches the way he did. But I used to go and sit in a circle, in a group, which you specifically said is not the way to learn. I learnt to sight read. I can play G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G really quickly, play green sleeves, picking it out and all of that. Then I went into a high school band, and despite my very strong held belief that I have some natural musical talent, everyone else in the band just got streets ahead of me. Just like something about that process, you really like put all the pieces together. Yeah. Something about that process stopped me from learning stuff by ear. Yeah. And then one more little thing, the podcast about Lewis's guitar playing. I go to Melbourne because my uncle's a career musician, actually from Wellington as well, like yourself, a few years older. He taught me the blues scale, and I was off. Yeah, I was off. I was looser. It's incredible, that 10 minutes of learning. Yeah. What do you think that's all about?
I think music is intimidating, and it has language that intimidates, and I don't know if it's intentional, but because I learned to read and everything first.
Hugely valuable.
Until I threw it all away.
Yeah.
And started learning stuff by ear. And that kind of music, that I was learning by ear was completely different to what I've been taught. I've been taught cornet, trumpet, and to read. And now I find I'm teaching people to read a little bit now.
Yeah.
After the light's gone on and they've got using their ear first.
Yeah.
And that's the old.
Yeah, I got taught first.
The old-fashioned Suzuki method is actually, learning to imitate first, then applying the theory to that rather than trying to do it the other way around. It's just more logical.
I'll tell you, I wasn't intimidated. I was, looking back, I was really inspired by playing music.
Yeah.
I was really uninspired by sitting in that circle.
Yeah.
But I didn't know a way out of it because I was like 15 or whatever.
Yeah, and you cannot teach a group of people as well as you can teach somebody individually because everyone operates on a slightly different level. Some people are visual, some people are oral. You've got to do one-on-ones for it to be effective. You can probably teach the basic, couple of chords and strumming and stuff to a group. But after that, you really need to get one-on-one. But
I think it's why I gave up. And so you also said a fairly decent, pick-up around the home guitar these days you can get for $300 or $400.
Easy.
So I think I'm going to buy a guitar after about 20 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Good for you.
Yeah, and I saw you do distance online lessons as well.
Yeah. I've in fact been getting more, obviously, because of COVID. A lot of my in-life students have been coming via Skype.
Yeah.
And I get amazing amounts of international students. Really? Yeah, because a couple of my videos have gone off on YouTube. I've got 10,000 subs on YouTube now just from teaching. So
wow,
it's been really, I'm not really organised in that regard.
No,
I don't chase them or anything, but I didn't.
No, it was me actually.
I thought it's usually me.
Studio operator, keep going.
Yeah. And so I don't know, man. I love all teaching, and of course, distance learning is never going to be as good as in real life. There's something about being in 3D and and being able to play together. If they ever get rid of lag, then video conferencing will be great for music.
Totally.
But at the moment, it's difficult, but better than nothing.
I noticed that. Well, you might not have noticed, but you often kind of negotiate identity around your music.
I do.
Yeah, and so
I'm conflicted, man.
I thought it was very kind of thorough rationale, and you basically don't want to get pigeonholed, and you also want to sort of be malleable within kind of genre and what people perceive of you.
I actually have a problem with genre as a rule.
Yeah,
because I listen to so much different music, and I hate and I think if we're real, that my daughter's generation, i.e. millennials and younger,
no, you're right, they
don't think about genre, man.
Yeah.
Genre is invented by record companies and record stores
and journalists to say what the thing is.
To shorthand, so that you don't have to actually describe something properly.
What's that thing I heard in Hackney? Jungle.
Yeah, that's right. But then it gets into subgenres, and it all gets really, I don't like this and I don't like that, and it gets so tribal. It's like, and it's a shame because people miss out on good shit.
Well, they also you're right, there's a blinker that goes on, and those kind of genre people, not all metalers. It's probably a bad example. I've got friends that are.
Hey man, I grew up in the Hutt Valley in the 80s, so I know all about.
One of the greatest shows I've seen in the last few years was Miss Sugar. We're all good if it's good music, but that I am this till I die thing. Is often coupled with I really freaking hate da da da, and I was like, kind of that approach to genre is almost kind of like music's version of racism.
Yeah, or tribal politics, It's the same. It's like refusing to accept that someone else could have a good idea because you were brought up this way.
Yeah.
It's scary, man. I don't know, because my good mate Trevor Ricci, who ran Pagan Records, right, if you look at that as a label in the 80s, you can't, that's why I love, and he probably turned me on to this whole idea of not being a purist and listening to everything with open ears.
Yeah, it was a varied label.
Because what were they? I mean, they had Ardija, the Waratahs, Smoke Shop, Paul Labana-Jones, Greg Johnson, and others. I mean, you cannot pigeonhole that label.
No.
And so his kind of saying or his byline was because alternative was the word that was cool at the time.
Yeah.
The only alternative is to listen to everything.
Yeah.
And it's so true, man. And it's like, I try to surround myself with people who think like that about music, because I love blues, and obviously it's been a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And people I'm screwed in New Zealand. I'm the blues guy now.
Yeah.
You know.
I loved, one of the shows was Well, can I have some listener questions now? And there was two. And one of them was like, what's the blues scene like in Wellington? And so you did, to your credit, pause for a bit of thought. And this is like the guy who 30, 40 years, whatever, has been blues deep. You actually pause to consider it, and then you go, I don't think there's a blues scene in Wellington. I was like, well, they haven't told Darren about it.
No.
You know?
I mean, obviously there are people, there's always people who love to play whatever genre, but...
Oh, look, you've always had a following because you play great shows.
Yeah, and
so that's the scene.
But I don't think I've ever actually made a blues record that's just blues, so...
Yeah.
It's always been a little bit sideways here and there.
So we'll get to that. Just roll back because I'm going to extract some bio from you with this point as well.
Okay.
Because when I first saw you and heard you, and even as a youth back then, was like, that's a great band. He's a great frontman. Was because I was way too young to get into bars. They were just things with a Rhinex sign on the front.
Yeah, man. Weren't they?
But I think the council must have been. I think the council really injected a lot of arts and culture to a wider audience back then because I saw so much great stuff at Summer City where I saw you guys somewhere like that and more than once. So starting there, you were Chicago with this considering identity thing. You were Chicago Smoke Shop. What made you move from Chicago Smoke Shop to Smoke Shop?
We were embarrassed by it. It
Why?
was like, because it was American.
Right.
And when we looked to explain it, when the band was formed in 1985...
And there was a menswear shop as well in Little Old Wellington.
I just realised now. I know. Oh, we got all kinds of... Anyway, basically we didn't have a name. We had a gig in a week. And so we turned over a Roy Buchanan album and picked a song. And that's what we became. And once we got it, our first gig was like... I don't know if people remember the Cricketers' Arms, but it was like the touring venue in Wellington. It was like basically a concrete box. Was that me or you?
Oh, my goodness.
That was you again. You shocker.
It's a reminder that you're coming.
I love it.
How did you get here so early? Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrible. And so, our first gig, we basically sold it out, which is like... And once you've done that, you're afraid to change it. It's like, that's the name.
And you were kind of new to the music industry in general. You were 19, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that was a result.
Yeah, it was huge, man. We thought, like, in 1985, there was still a realistic chance that if you cracked it, you could actually make a living just playing the pubs 6 nights a week. A good living,
You said you're a bluesman, but... you're not like a white kind of, could you call it bogan rock blues?
Yeah, well, that's the thing in New Zealand. That's kind of what it is, isn't it? It's more like classic rock, bluesy classic rock is a shorthand for blues.
But what I also liked is that you said at the same time, just like playing mean riffs, bro, like you do like to get out and bust some bogan blues rock because it's great stuff when needed. Yeah. So your sidekick is the country blues rock, twisted rumba, southern soul, Tex-Mex, New Orleans, Eastern European folk man. And you can kind of interchange those the way I see it. So reconciling that relates to Smoke Shop. So 5 years from 19 to... You're already like a seasoned veteran.
I was
but
24, it was all over. And I had a taste and I wanted more.
What happened? Did it just run its course and you didn't expect it to become the juggernaut it did and you all just wanted to like take a breather?
I think basically by that stage the band was only 3 members. Yeah. Financial members. It got to the point where we were turning over $500,000 a year.
Wow.
And it's past IRD can't get us on that now, I don't think. But there was no money in it. It was all paying crew and of course we had to hire, we were like between a 7 and 11 piece band depending on the show, so we had to hire horn players, keyboard player, bass player and crew and everything. So it was getting expensive and we were turning over a lot of money and not making anything. Yeah. And the other two guys, the Tioni brothers, great musicians, I just don't think they were as interested in doing anything different with it. They just wanted it to be a rhythm and blues show band.
I got you, because that's from that great tradition of...
and I enjoyed that, man. I loved it, but I kind of outgrew it.
Yeah.
And so it was a combination just of it got tired and too hard, and we looked at the money, and our manager ripped us off in the end. Yeah. And it just... it would just run its course, and I was kind of pushing in other directions. I wanted to introduce other influences, and they weren't interested. So
we'll talk about the naughty boy moment when you made that other album recently, the one that But what I wanted to ask you about is I noticed, and you said by virtue of saying you're pouring a whole lot of money back in, you guys were kind of fresh-faced in terms of like understanding the industry and shows and stuff, but I noticed that you did what Shihad have often talked about what they did earlier. I've picked that up somewhere along the line. Is they knew the value of a band having a full scale rock and roll show.
Yeah.
So who impressed that on you guys? In your early 20s,
Yeah.
like we got all this money coming in.
Yeah.
Who told you?
Well, that was our manager. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
He was a guy called Tim Robery, and he's a lovely
Yeah.
guy. I don't think he meant to rip us off. He was struggling to live, so I'm not going to disparage.
So he sort of accidentally took
well,
your money.
I think he was just. I just think he was like. He didn't have any other form of income, and I just think he lived on. The money just kind of worked its way into the rent sometimes,
And it was paper ledger back then.
Yeah,
so,
it's life. I get it now, and I've long forgiven him.
Yeah.
But he did amazing. I mean, he basically got us from Wellington. We were just playing the bar. We were filling bars.
Yeah.
So he saw us, and the first shows we did with him were little out of town pub gigs, and he still managed to get those full. He just knew how to get people to things. It was easier in those days. You almost put blues on something and stick it in a pub, and people would go. But what he did was he talked us into the Robert Cray support in Auckland in 1987 as complete unknowns.
Yeah.
And
he talked you into it, or he talked them into it.
Well, he talked them into it. He talked us into
talking
the gig.
everyone into it.
And it got to and it got back to us that all the older blues guys in Auckland were like, who are these young punks?
Yeah.
And
but hurt, as the kids say.
Yeah. But it really worked.
Yeah.
Like that show immediately sent us on a path to like people started talking. The word of mouth was a much probably bigger thing than it is now.
Yeah.
And it was literal word of mouth, people talking rather than, online.
Yeah.
We blew up.
I remember it, Darren. I remember it. I was there.
And it was pretty exciting, man.
But am I overestimating the value of having a serious?
We rehearsed for a year before we played a show.
Wow.
So and I mean, it's interesting that you picked the Shihad thing because their first gig outside of high school was opening for us.
Yeah, really.
and I've known Tom more or less, and I worked with Tom at Kingsley Smith Music years ago.
Because that's how you and I have a familiarity with each other. Because I used to come in as a grommet, basically. We'd come in from Wellington High School. Great, because I remember you really well as well. And you were. I wanted to
and I
say
think you
that
probably
today.
had Fritz. Probably had Fritz in your ear about
Fritz
how
and
good
I
I
are
was.
like
Fritz loves me, man.
Fritz and I are like I don't know, like something and something. I don't want to try and come up with a quick opposite for Germany, but no, you were great, man. You were like a bunch of kids coming into a music shop is kind of like they're just coming to a music shop at the time.
Yeah.
But if the people at the music shop embrace you, that's a good thing. And I remember it was Larkin as well. And But there was a lot of hijinks around there. I mean, but you remember Hamish?
Oh, very well.
Do you remember? Oh, you don't remember. You won't remember this specific moment. Neither will Tom. But Tom Larkin introduced me to the first sample technology I'd seen in the flesh.
Wow.
I don't know what he was using, by saying Hamish is a turd in a Scottish accent into it and chasing him around the...
Hamish Fraser Atwell Burns.
There was a Scottish thing, right?
Yeah.
He was a lovely guy too.
He's a dude, and we still talk on Facebook and stuff.
And who owned that place at the time? It wasn't Dave Berry, was it?
No, that was owned because Dave had just left. He was just left to open his own place. I think it was Kingsley Smith, the guy from Auckland, who owned it, and his son was running it. At the stage.
Oh, because Kingsley Smith was Auckland as well.
Yeah.
And then did you move to Rock Shop?
I did eventually, but I went to Kiwi Music first.
Yeah.
And then Rock Shop. But
must have been Tom that went to Rock Shop, because I have to mention that as well, your guys' sense of humour. That We Will Not... Oh, no, it was the other... You guys, this is so indulgent. Rock Shop had We Will Not Be Undersold on their instruments, and you guys had We Will Not Be Underpants.
Yeah. Man, that's a long time ago, thinking back on it.
I remember.
I loved it and hated music retail, The fun was fun, but
it's a gig. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I didn't take to it, and in the end...
You're not going, reading people's gas meters or, giving them parking tickets.
Yeah, exactly.
You're with kindred spirits.
Yeah, exactly. And it was great, man. And, of course, what you said about, young kids coming in, man, I was still remembered it. It was only 10 years ago that I was a young kid at that stage.
Yeah,
I remember that feeling. Young. And Dave Berry was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for Dave too. That man has given me some, he's given me some of his knowledge at length, as he does over the years. But he's a
lovely man. And so, man. And that whole thing about, to get back to the show thing, I definitely gave Tom a lot of advice, whether he took any of it or not.
Oh, I think they did, man.
We talked about things like heavier strings on guitars and Fender Bassmans, which I was right into, you know. And I think the next record they did, they pretty much used Bassmans and went for less of a Metallica tone and a bigger sound.
He's such
Tom
a talented...
is always going to go that far because
yeah.
he's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful dude, and he's talented. And you just don't get that combination that often.
But he's not so cocksure as I say.
No, that's what I mean.
Like
he's a beautiful dude.
Yeah, great guy.
He actually gets that no one knows it all.
Back to giving up booze. You guys are also great giving us cigarettes. Thanks, but no thanks at the same time. So I shook that one a few years ago.
Oh,
but,
dude.
How was that one? Because I was actually going to mention this.
Smoking in shops.
Wait,
man.
This comes back to identity. I think we used to go outside, but this the kids had to go outside.
Yeah.
This kind of comes back to identity for me, and you're either going to give me a blank stare here, or kind of get this. I thought the blues that you kind of your shtick's a bad word. You suited cigarettes, and it is kind of tied. All of that is kind of tied up with identity. And
yeah.
I'm going to start becoming
a psychologist,
someone else.
Yeah, I think it was all tied in with
the health thing.
No, I mean, the moving on from cigarettes was literally falling over and cutting my head open on the studio door because I developed really bad asthma. I quit smoking about 20 years ago.
Well done, man.
But I was a shocking addict. I was a 2-pack a day, and we're talking Marlboro Lights.
Well, it's funny I say you suited them, as I just realised it's actually probably more like you must have always had one in your hand.
I did, and that was shocking.
Yeah.
And looking back on that now, we had an ashtray set up by the staff room door, and we just stand there smoking while people came in. I can't believe we did that.
You were doing nothing at all unusual.
I know.
I
know it was the zeitgeist at the time, but I looking back on it, I just can't believe it.
And we sound like we're talking Mad Men era. But I say to my students, who actually, to be honest, to them, the mid-90s is a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But because I tell them, because I can't believe it, about a year or two after that, my religions lecturer would smoke at the front of the lecture, but he'd also smoke in the tutorials in those tiny little rooms in Kelburn.
My God.
And he'd say, if you're a non-smoker, sit near the window and open it. It was one of those old wooden...
Yeah. Oh, I just don't... I look back on it, and you're right. It was tied in with. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, well,
that's how I got hooked. Exactly.
For my era, it was probably like bloody that endorsement that Marlboro gave Slash. Honestly, you're right.
We were so into it. We wanted to get a Lucky Strike sponsorship deal.
Yeah,
we didn't, but we got Jim Beam instead.
It's a killer logo. It's a great logo. It really is.
I look back on that whole time and think how much of it was just out of control, young egos and manipulated obviously by those companies that were selling this shit. But amazing how easily manipulated we were.
Look, and I, like you, was an American toasted tobacco man, and I'm glad it was my early 20s lungs with those Marlboro Reds rather than my...
Me too, man. I gave
it a good nudge. I kept going till about 2 or 3 years ago. I certainly wasn't heavy, but I had never stopped, and I was still on that first one in the morning that some people say they still really enjoy, but to me was kind of like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
It was about 10 a day.
Well, that's not too bad, but I mean, I don't think lung cancer discriminates, does it? It's like
no.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor? Once again, the brand named most was Camel.
It used to be, lady, you had no rights, no right to vote, no right to property, no right to the wage you earned. That was back when you were laced in, hemmed in, and left with not a whole lot to do. That was back when you had to sneak up to the attic if you wanted a cigarette. Smoke in front of a man? Heaven forbid.
You come a long way, baby, to get where you got to today.
Introducing new Virginia Slims.
Here.
Cool? All right.
Your cigarette's not tasting cool enough till you come up to Cool's.
And so, in the gentle art of smoking, the House of Dunhill has combined the finest traditions of the past with all that is most desirable today.
The vibrant and racy world of Peter Stuyvesant, the international passport to smoking pleasure.
Day, these are great. So refreshing.
I'm again, that was a moment where I felt, but of course, the moment I gave up, I piled on the weight. I replaced it with food. and that's only come to an end recently, really. So it's a
It's
journey.
the anxiety
man.
thing you talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, you're an artist,
Yeah.
all these cliches are...
It's all
often
cliches,
true.
man.
Yeah.
The upbringing, the whole thing,
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I normally start with your upbringing, but we can't go back there now.
No,
I
no.
do know that you're from Whanganui, which was Wanganui back then.
Yeah.
You ended up in the hut.
Yeah.
And do you consider that like your kind of origin? Like I go back to Lyle Bay, and that's where I grew up. Is the hut your...
I think my tūranga waiwai, if you want to put it that way, is Wellington.
Great.
Is Pornicky, because it's the place where I felt like I became an individual and more aware that I wasn't just a kid.
I don't know why I'm not back there, man. I'm such a die-hard Wellingtonian as well.
I do love it, man.
Yeah.
And I've been around and seen. The only other place in the world I'd want to live would be New Orleans. And that's only because of the music. I couldn't live there for any other reason. I mean, even though it's not that American compared to the rest of the states.
Yeah.
I couldn't live in a place with a healthcare system like that, and
it's more than the healthcare
we're
system.
We're
man.
racist
It's,
as fuck here, but it's nothing like that.
The empire is crumbling, and I even noticed it a few years ago when I went back there. It's like I don't want to get too far into this, but what I noticed, and I've been there only very briefly, is that even before all the fuckery of Trump and so on, I clearly saw and wasn't expecting to see a kind of an infrastructure crumbling.
Oh yeah,
it's sort of like the kind of like the glory days. Yeah, someone hasn't buffed it since the 50s or whatever, But I was kind of surprised to see that. Mind you, I was in one part of the States, which is kind of like, they're kind of almost different countries.
Well, they are, man. Especially if you spend any time in the South, it's different down there.
So in 2005 or whenever it was, we're going all over the place. This is great
that's fine.
because the conversations deems it. You won a songwriting award that was based in Nashville, right?
Yeah,
was that really quite significant to you in terms of like the kind of motherland? Sort of like winning a best rap album in New York.
Mate, I think if it had been 1995, then maybe. But
why do you say that?
Because I've grown out of, what's the word? Bill Lake has a song called "Growing Out of the Blues," and it's got a great double meaning when you think about it.
I think we need to get you lying on a couch about this blues, non-blues thing.
Well, no, I think it becomes your identity.
No, you're right.
If you're really into something, and I understand the hip hop community is big like that too. It becomes you super identify with the whole genre, and I think since I met Trevor Ricci, I've been slowly growing away from just focusing on the one thing.
No, look, as I say, I was totally jesting then, and I totally get it from a number of angles. Like, as I sort of said, the pigeonholing that audiences less engaged and immersed as people like us do can be really not only limiting, but it can be detrimental to one's career. So there's that, and then
it's not even that as much as it was detrimental to my own health to write things off that were good. That would actually, man, I put on. I mean, my favourite album this year is Avondale Bowling Club, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the best New Zealand record in a decade.
Yeah, he's...
But you would find a lot of people my age would just write that off who weren't into that kind of music. What is that kind of music? It's bebop, man.
Well, you know what? That's so funny. That's like... Well, now I think about it, he's done exactly what you speak of.
Exactly.
They were like... I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but they were the, like, quintessential, like... kind of party and bullshit hip-hop band.
Yeah.
Very, very well done version of it. Was clear he was a very talented lyricist and thinker.
Years ago. I mean, I first heard about him probably 2012, 2013, around then.
Funnily enough, he's on the menu today because what happened with him, and I think what one of the turning points was, we'll talk about that in a second because that brings us to somewhere else, is his decision for a song... and your decision for a song around the era of Key.
That's right.
So forget him for a sec, because I'll talk about what I saw happen with Tom.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you told this a million times?
Yeah, so obviously you're talking about Planet Key.
Yeah.
Which part of me wishes never happened, and part of me is really proud of. I'm very, very conflicted about it. Basically, I write songs like this all the time that I just never going to do anything with, right? That I just think, that's probably a little bit too far.
Yeah.
So I like my politics to be there, but not be super obvious.
Yeah.
And but my partner convinced me that I should.
Good. Yeah.
Just because Keys was such a prick, and he probably still is, And so we put it out, and all that shit happened. We've got It wasn't banned.
What shit happened?
Well, effectively, it was banned. The Electoral Commission said it was a political advertisement, and also
the song or the song and the video.
The song and the video were a political. They didn't separate the two. They saw it as one thing.
Just remind me, the year 2014. 14?
So it was during the 2014 election.
So in 2014, in a democracy in New Zealand, a song got banned out of the blue. When's the last time that's happened?
I can't remember.
Yeah, right.
So because I used the phrase, "You want compassion, don't vote for me."
It's sort of electioneering or whatever, or
yeah, they said that was discouraging people to vote for John Key. And even though the video said. The video had obviously explicit images of John Key as cartoon.
I was going to say, why are we talking about what it says versus what you see?
Playing a Maui dolphin and stuff, with exploding oil rigs in the background and stuff. That was Jeremy Jones, who did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't have got half the notice without Jeremy's video. But the song itself didn't actually name John Key.
No.
And so... and then I got approached by a lawyer basically saying, look, you should challenge this.
Pro bono?
Yeah, Wendy Aldred.
Yeah.
She was amazing.
Great.
And we ended up in the High Court.
That's what I was going to ask. So there's also how much time a person is willing to give to this.
Yeah, exactly.
How long did this
So we
play
went
out?
straight into court to try and they reserved their decision.
You went straight to the High Court? No,
Yeah, straight to the High Court. And they reserved their decision, which meant basically that they were going to wait till after the election. And then the decision came back in 2015 to say they shouldn't have banned it. And then they appealed.
Yeah.
And we went to the Court of Appeal. And won,
They appealed?
And we won that in 2016. So it took 2 years for us to have the right to be able to... now, obviously, a lot of people saying, you should have gone for damages because, you would have sold a shitload of songs, and et cetera. But, part of its notoriety was because it was banned. So I think it would have probably just...
Yeah, man, you were body count for a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
But better.
And a lot of people... I mean, I actually got emails, all kinds of emails, like death threat, records sent back.
You've had hate mail, man. Crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. And people saying, great song about John Key. I love him. Thanks for... They thought I was digging it.
Can I just ask, if a National Party person sends their CD back, I'd imagine they'd ask for the money back, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no.
A Labour person
No, they
like,
didn't, actually. And a couple of people who just pitched in for crowdfunding.
That was unfair of me.
For crowdfunding as well, said, no, we don't want it now. Keep the money, but we don't want the record. It was very weird, because it was pretty mild, really. It was lightly satirical. I think.
It was. I watched it today again. It was. It's obvious what it's about, but it's no burn it and shoot it and loot it.
No.
Yeah.
No, and see, at the same time, that's when Tom released. What was it called?
Yeah. No, we'll talk about that in a sec, because I think that made him. This is sort of guess. I think that made him reconsider a few things and grow up and move to Melbourne. But I was just going to say that. You see the hate mail and stuff. This is classic, because I'm reading about all of this. I'm sort of thinking about what's talked about in the podcast. And I read about the hate mail in this article, and I scroll down, it's on Stuff. And I think when you read these, you've got to do the voice of the commenter or, writer to TV. Not really interested in some washed-out muso who wastes his time making stupid ditties about the PM. That's Silky from Stuff Comments. And then, even though you weren't...
We kind of miss Stuff Comments, don't we?
Even though you weren't... Have they gone? I never know.
Yeah, they've gone.
Oh, I saw that today.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be old ones.
Yeah.
So Silky's sort of preserved like a mummy. But then, without... you never got Silky's input there. And... you called your next album Introducing or something, didn't you?
Introducing Darren Watson,
Great. So, Tom...
Yes.
Look, at the time, I was such a fan, and I was like, for me, this is just my opinion or perspective on it, I was like, it wasn't nearly as clever as what he could have come up with. It was like, kill the Prime Minister, kill the Prime Minister, kill the Prime Minister. And I think, and I speculate, that he was kind of quite aware of that, and I think that might have been why he, for a number of other reasons as well, kind of like went to Melbourne for a while. And I wonder, this is very much even more speculation, I wonder whether he was getting hassled about it like you were, to the point where he moved to Melbourne.
I imagine he got a lot more grief. Although, because it happened at the same time, people were conflating the two.
But
even
his
though,
one
even though they're
was
totally different.
My opinion
Yeah.
is his one was, which to me, he could put that cheeky element in, but very, very cleverly.
Yeah.
It was just a bad first Beastie Boys.
Yeah, I
record,
totally got where his anger was coming from.
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely.
I was
Yeah.
angry too, but I wanted it to be funny because I think humour gets a lot more
Absolutely.
attention.
And he wasn't being serious either. But
No.
the great glass half full thing about that is I think that is in no way small part of the reason we end up with Avondale Bowling
Yes.
Club. That
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
of what am I doing
And
here?
thank God for it, because really, I'm pretty. It hasn't been off my turntable.
It's extraordinary, yeah.
It's an amazing record.
Yeah.
Pocket
Yeah.
Lint is just beyond anything I've ever heard before.
Wow, that's great.
It's astounding.
Before we go off the Planet Key thing, I know you probably had this said to you before, but it's worth saying to you, you stood up for free speech in a democracy. So I kind of salute you because of 2020.
Yeah, man.
Because of the fuckery of the world.
Yeah, there is a little part of me that wishes I hadn't. So we could shut down these nutter other blues guitar players with kind of pretensions to be politicians.
It's just one guy, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It is.
But I'm not going to mention his name. 'Cause
Well, everyone knows it.
Everyone knows who
Well,
we're
look,
talking about. I think it's really sad.
Well, I think also I don't know anything of the man, but I know his lineage, and I think it's sad because his father's such a public figure as well,
Yeah,
and it's sort
yeah.
of like
and his bro,
don't
Mudder
the mana,
is,
bro. Keep
Mudder
the
is an
mana.
amazing singer and,
Yeah.
and a beautiful man, and yeah, I'm really sad about the whole thing, and I understand people's fear and anxiety and suspicion of government after 160, 170 years of colonialism. People up there being fucked over, man. And so they're readily accepting
you're
of a
right.
message that
You're right.
gives them an
You're
easy
right.
answer
You're
and
absolutely right.
more likely to accept conspiracies, man.
Darren,
and it's just ugly to watch him take advantage of it. I don't like it.
That is really perceptive, because that, to me, is very similar to the paradox in the US of people fucked over by the 1%,
Yeah.
embracing the 1%
Yeah.
as their saviour.
They're being manipulated
Yeah.
to do that, and it's the same thing, This guy is a prosperity evangelist,
Yeah.
and they're dangerous, man.
Who is the man who shall but not be named?
Who shall not be
Okay,
named,
so
you
now
know.
he's getting into taking people's money territory. I'm not into that.
Yeah, I mean, political candidates shouldn't be taking people's money to let them hear them speak. I think that's insane. I am going to get into this. I'm obviously doing it. It's just, but
Everyone knows who you're talking about.
They do, but I'm still not going to say his name. And I just look.
It's Monk to Wally to Honk.
It's just, I just think when this is all over on October the 18th, it's probably going to take him a couple of months to disappear, but there's going to be a lot of people. Some of these people believe he's going to be the Prime Minister on October the 18th, man. And it's really sad. I'm not angry at the people. I'm angry at the people who are taking advantage of these people. Instead of actually pointing out that the conspiracy they should be railing against is like free market capitalism and colonialism. This is the real problem. But it's not as easy to answer, and it doesn't have
and I just that wasn't theatre. I know.
It makes my head want to explode too.
It's just something no one can see, because what's happening now is, honestly, social media is really at peak disillusionment for me for now, because to me that's a lot of where all this is coming from.
Yep.
Is everything is a fucking argument, and it's to the point where I don't even put a kind of something to further confirm something comment or whatever anymore, because everyone's just ready to pounce, man. And I think it's I've lost a lot of my life to Facebook, but
yeah I know. I mean, you can't be a musician and not be on social media anymore. So it's like I'm there to kind of stay in my little community that works for me, but I just I try not to write people off who are down that rabbit hole, because a lot of them are my friends.
No, absolutely, man.
And but it comes a point where if the only answer is to shoot back a meme of bullshit, I don't want to be part of helping to spread that bullshit.
No, you're right. And shivers.
And it's weird because the Planet Key thing got me. A lot of people who are really into conspiracies were really keen to talk to me when that song came out, because they kind of took it a few degrees further than I was prepared to.
Right.
I mean, Vinnie Eastwood wanted to interview me, and I took one look at his show, and
I don't know who that is.
No, thank you. Well, you're better off not knowing. I mean, He's basically the king conspiracy theorist of the country.
Really?
On YouTube.
Okay.
And so
I will seriously, for research purposes, get you go back and listen.
Yeah,
to
look,
that.
I'm sure he's a nice enough guy, but for whatever reason, he believes that there are dark evil forces trying to control us, and not the ones that actually are.
Not the ones that actually are. The lizard men. So, so look, a couple of points on that. You just made me realise that that was the relaxing tonic of lockdown was paradoxically having your head stuck in social media the whole time.
Well, I mean, he who shall not be named, I never saw him make a political...
He who shall not be named Junior, thank you.
Okay. I never saw him make a political statement once in his entire life until COVID-19. So, you tell me why.
Yeah.
Well,
look, another thing on that, because it's really important if you're not aware, because it actually really quite annoyed me, or bothered me.
Yes.
Bothered me, not annoyed because I'm powerless about it, is that second cluster, or one of the clusters that broke out in the second lockdown up here, was an evangelical church saying, COVID-19's or whatever.
From a personal point of view, I mean, obviously it's a real disease and it's really damaging. And
I think you're informing the wrong... No,
I know,
I'm
but I'm just saying, and people spreading the idea that it's not is so dangerous, just generally, but I'm taking it personally because I've got tens of thousands of dollars on the line next month.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
And I'm an independent, like, I don't have a manager, I don't have a bank manager, really. So, it's like, I'm looking at it and thinking, you bastards.
Are you just kind of rolling the craps dice and booking?
That's what I've always done.
Yeah.
So it's like, really, it's a bit of a risk because if they decide we're staying at 2, I'm going to have to cancel probably over half the gigs.
Yeah.
And I've already paid for Facebook advertising, posters, getting here, all the stuff that, all the promotional costs are fixed and upfront and I have to pay them. So, it's like, and it's gutting for the people in the band who aren't going to get paid.
Yeah.
And the venues aren't going to have gigs.
Yeah.
And it's like,
because it's worth pointing out to people is that if people don't know, you're essentially the boss. You're the Don Dada. Like the band is not. It's you employing people to come out and do your shows.
Yeah, and I've always believed that's the way to go. If you've got your name on the marquee, it's not. Yeah. Why should anyone else kind of do it for free, man?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And it's funny because I'm not a capitalist in the sense that I'm what I describe myself as a Fabian, right? So I guess that means I'm a moderate socialist.
What's a Fabian? Is that like a literature derived?
No, Fabian's a society that started in England in the late 19th century that kind of said, Marx is right, but we need to do this incrementally.
I don't see you as a capitalist at all. I was going to mention, I see you as actually you're quite similar to the uncle I was talking about. You're someone who's got in and decided what your passion is early on, and you've grafted around that to keep it going.
Yeah, man.
And you've supported a bunch of people, and doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I still feel bad when I charge
out on the smoke shop yacht, like, ah!
Yeah. I still feel bad charging people money for something. It's a weird vibe. I wish I lived in a society where housing was free, and I know it's utopian, and like people did what they wanted, and the cleaner, the shitty jobs that no one wants to do, they get paid lawyer rates, so they get done, and everyone else just kind of does. The idea of a job that you have to have a job that you hate in order to survive is, I think, if we get through climate change, that's
getting into Marx. That's kind of Marx, what Marx was about, right?
It's like, if we get through climate change, it's an idea that time has probably come. It's probably the only way we're going to survive. Honestly, man.
No, the way we're talking, I was going to ask you about this today. Like, it's getting down to that. My mum said, well, if China invaded here, like, blah, 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 like, I'm like, oh my God, is that where global kind of security is at the moment?
It is.
Oh, man.
It's like the biggest fear for climate change is we shouldn't be talking about sea level rise. That's scary economically. But it's like when the rest of the world is like toast and temperate places like us are where everybody wants to be. We have plenty of evidence of what human beings do when the shit hits the fan. And so I just don't think we're having the right discussion a lot of the time about what climate change will wrought.
Because we're all on social media racking each other up. I seriously think it's the opiate of the masses at the moment.
Of course it is, man.
I'll put that in my status update later on. So you're quite uncannily throughout this chat been bringing up a lot of kind of topics that I had to address, and just so quickly, one of them, which I was going to talk about.
I'm an easy read, bro. I'm an easy read.
The patronage. If this was a date, I think it's going very well.
Yeah.
The patronage model, not why I was going to talk to you about it, but what you just said before. It sounds like the patronage model suits your ethos better, because that's people going, here is money because I...
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking in the next decade that's probably where I'll head.
Yeah.
And away from... Because I love making albums, but I'm starting to think that I need to kind of just base things on... Put it all into one thing so that my teaching and my playing and songs are all one service. And it's like... And that way, it's good for me because I need structure in my life too. Otherwise, what happens is... As a person who suffers from depression and anxiety, I'll do this record. I know what's going to happen from previous cases.
Yeah.
I'll have a blast. It'll be brilliant. And then about 2 weeks after it, I'll go into a hole for about three months where I just won't want to kind of ever do it again, and it'll be my last record ever. And I've got to find a way out of that kind of... I'm not bipolar, so I don't have the huge highs. I just have plateau and huge lows.
The patronage model is nothing new to the music industry.
No.
In fact, the music industry we've just got out of, like a nuclear winter, is a fairly modern thing that started kind of around the rock and roll single.
Of course.
Before that, if you had a bit of money back in the day, you might have a private musician come to your house where you music. So it's sort of, I think it's good. I think it's more organic, providing people want to support what you do, and you have that depth and that longevity and that quality.
Yeah, I think that's there. I'm just very aware also that I'm 54 next month, and a lot of my audience are around my age. So the digital thing is only part of my thing. So there's still a very much analog, real world who aren't on social media that I still play to. And I don't want to totally neglect that. For instance, I still make CDs. Right?
You just gave me one. It's fantastic. I have a CD player in my car and good speakers, man.
And the thing is, every show I do, the last record we made vinyl as well.
Yeah.
And I thought, the vinyl's going to go off.
Yeah.
Right? But the CDs sold 10 to 1 to the vinyl.
Yeah.
People still buy CDs at
absolutely.
my gigs. And I have to kind of people choose how they consume music or how they support an artist or whatever. And I kind of still have to do that.
There's so many ways to do it. Like I remember ages ago when I saw Mikey from Luke doing some album, and it was like the beginning of kind of this era of doing what do we do online, and he was doing T-shirts with a swing tag with a download code, so you're buying. But back to
he's a pretty onto it guy, is Mike.
Well, he is. Although also I have heard him referred to as the human whirlwind at the same time as well. So take with that what you will. His whirlwind has come down. He's got a bit older and wiser too. I was going to say, like, let me give someone so experienced in the industry kind of advice, but something you said before is sounds like you need to figure out the person close to the person who's not natural with digital and have them be your human interface.
That's right.
Getting the heavy vinyl to the,
Yeah. I mean, I think the trouble is that I don't want to overthink it, and I don't want it to get in the way of what I do musically.
Yeah, but I'm not keep giving you advice.
No. So I mean, it's like it is stuff I think about. I do, I mean, because it's how I live, No,
you do. I looked today and I was like, for someone who I heard say that they kind of, whatever I read, something was said somewhere where you kind of grapple with it all a bit at the first. Like you had the social media presence of an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I do like. I mean, I love people, man. I love discussion and all that stuff. That's why when you talk about the toxicity and the shouting, I hate that too.
Yeah.
I actually hate tribalism in politics. It really bothers me. It's like I'm a Green Party member and supporter, but that doesn't mean that I agree with every single thing the Green Party does. That's why the Green Party's cool, because it's okay to do that.
See what 2020 is doing? Our merry conversation keeps getting dragged back onto the rocks.
I'm sorry, man. We're in the middle of an election
I'm right there with you.
campaign right now,
Yeah, who would know that? Are you, despite? I would imagine that despite you're giving up the booze and so on, that why am I even asking this? You're voting for cannabis reform, of course.
Of course, I am. Yeah.
I do that.
I haven't smoked weed in 20 years, but
neither.
I can't understand why it's not. It shouldn't be illegal. It's ridiculous.
I haven't either, because it makes me disappear from parties, and people say, "Where were you?" And I was like, I got really paranoid and went home and ate a pie under the covers.
Yeah, well,
but what I've heard from the countries where it has been legalised is that's because we don't really know what our strains of weed are and so on. So I'm going to say, if it turns around, I'm going to dabble. I'm going to try the one that makes you like creative, and I'll give it another go.
Well, I did it for years, thinking this is how you're supposed to feel, and wondering why. I was just like, I was bricking it the whole time. I was like, I'm an anxious
really
personality,
stoned?
And when I finally was diagnosed with anxiety and put on pretty hardcore medication for it, it was like, my doctor was like, no, stay away from weed, bro. And
but were you like in at night, or a kind of like wake and bakey kind of?
I wasn't like carrying bags around or anything, but I was at every opportunity I would partake. It was just like someone offered you a drink,
absolutely,
and
I've seen this. The thing with people. That's the other thing with New Zealand pop culture. I don't know how it's changed, because, as I say, it's been years. Is a tinny still $20? But that thing of like the British guy comes over used to smoking spliffs, and that drink in a New Zealand joint, and suddenly like he's taken out by like a submarine missile, and that's what most of us were introduced to at about 15. Oh goodness, we have to go through the key things now. So you did the pop album. We're not going to get there. It's an hour and 2 minutes. But I did think it was funny that
you can cut a whole lot of the other shit out.
No, I love it. It was sort of like, it all stays in. That's the point of this.
Good.
But to me, it was sort of like you kind of spoke of this period. So after, this is going far back, after Smoke Shop, you kind of, it was a middle finger. You released a pop album that, by your admission, was really bad. Was it intended to be bad?
No, it wasn't intended to be bad.
Yeah.
But I realised before it came out that it was bad.
Was it? Did it fit within the era of bad pop music? Like,
I still think there's some good. I still think there's some good songs on it.
Yeah.
But it's like,
what was pop in that era? Did it have electronic backing?
No, it's kind of it's pop rock, I guess. It's
97, 98.
Yeah, I recorded it in 95, and the record company sat on it for 3 years. So it shows you. No, it wasn't quite there. It was more like, oh man, I can't describe it really. Right. Imagine, I guess I was listening to pop at the time, so that would have been, probably early Radiohead, Oasis.
Okay, well that's if I go Chumbawamba and you go Radiohead, you're in okay waters. You're in very safe waters.
But it's me, so it's going to naturally sound bluesy, right? Yeah. So even when I try, and even old classic rock is kind of, there's a Led Zeppelin-y moment on it. It's kind of, it's just not me. And I was just literally, I was trying to say, look, I can do this. And I know that now. At the time, I didn't. I just thought, hey, I can do this. I was completely...
How did it go?
I think it sold 80.
Yeah.
That was in the days when CDs sold.
Have you got a box in your garage?
Trevor sent me the remaining stock.
Great.
I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to put it in landfill. I might just glue it together and make bricks that we can use for something.
Now, I want to know whether this is conscious or not, but I love it either way. That's why I bothered to go back here, because there is a payoff for this. You kind of, not renounce, but you sort of disillusioned. You're pulling away from blues for a while. You make this kind of like trying to make this chart album. Then you come back with not only a very much a blues-based album, but you call it King Size, which to me is that some big dong energy coming back? the blues man, the blues man is back, or
it's just cigarettes.
Right, okay.
And it's that whole tie-in. It's that.
I think there's some fraud.
And obviously, B.B. King, Freddie King, Albert King. Okay. It's like, I mean, I'm glad I did that record, because I gave myself permission to play blues again, and I mean, that record was really fraught making it.
Totally.
That was when I quit smoking during that record, when I literally passed out at the end of a session.
Oh, right.
And the big recording studios back in the day, they had the big door with the metal trays and stuff.
Yeah.
So I carked it and passed out and fell over and hit my head on the...
Wow, Marmalade?
Marmalade.
Yeah. So what's funny about that story? We keep going into like quite existential darkness in this podcast in quite a good way. As those guys up there love me. I was making ads there for Active, and I go back there. My favourite person, and he'd given me great words when I left Wellington. And what had killed Grant from Marmalade? The fact that he used to smoke outside the window all the time. He died a very young man.
I know, he was a lovely. He was
a lovely guy.
He was the reason that record got made.
Yeah,
because I run out of money. In fact, the person that
they did a lot of that. Man.
Well, it wasn't even my money. Another person came along and said they wanted to make a record and be my manager.
Yeah.
And I ended up firing them as my manager because they were bloody useless. And so he stopped making he said, I'm not going to finance the rest of the record, and you can't have it. And so I had to buy him out. And anyway, Grant at Marmalade was amazing. So Wellington has always produced bands with horn sections, right?
Yeah, and you guys, you said, I wonder why. And I figured it out via a dad joke that came to me.
Yeah.
It's Wellington, and they are wind instruments.
You're probably right.
So
That's really bad.
So yeah, it's terrible. So South Pacific Soul was the 2005 album.
Yeah.
And the reason I was kind of manoeuvring there is that sounded like a bit more of that kind of Welly Bro crossover type album.
I think that's probably where it was being pitched, maybe.
Yeah.
But again, it's still me.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, but that album, man, again,
I mean,
all
that
my records,
I
know you do. In my looking back myself, I can only hear the good songs and the bad performances.
Yeah.
And like...
Well, that's it, isn't it?
That is, and that's pretty much the life of an artist, really, is you pick yourself to bits, you know.
Yeah.
And no one else probably does. But I'm like, I was trying... And there were other people... There was a record label involved, right? Nick Bollinger's label called Red Rocks Records. So he produced that one.
Yeah.
And I think the name was like attempting to sell it as something else or whatever. You know, there's a couple of good songs on it, and I love the fact that I got to sing with Rick Bryant on a song.
Yeah, I just love that sort of. I totally spotted that it was a hark to that really collaborative and cross-pollinating nature of Wellington.
It's cool. It's funny when I listen back to it now. It's like, it's like everything. You kind of you can just remember the vibe in the room, and it was lovely. It was really nice to make. Yeah. It's not something that I go back to very often and check out to see. I mean, I just remember that it was really nice.
Now, really briefly, I might have this wrong. I saw, I think on your Bandcamp, not all of your creative output is available. Is that kind of licensing and all that kind of malarkey?
No, the only one that's not there is Ruprecht the Monkey Boy, Overnight Sensations, the pop album. I'm not trying to... I could put it up there for free, I suppose. It's just so radically different that... look, if anyone's listening and they really want it, I'll send them one. No charge.
If anyone's listening, I'll take it. If anyone's listening and wants a great sense of Darren talking about negotiating around outside of blues, I had a great time listening to Hungarian Rhapsody.
Oh yeah,
last night, because you said it sort of polarised some people. I thought it was your sense of humour, and
of course.
I know, but I did not know there is a Hungarian Rhapsody as a song.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I thought it was that name was your creation.
No, it was just mine, and then I chucked for a Kiwi fella on the end of it to kind of make it mine.
It's such a fruity tune.
It is.
It's very well done.
It's music for a really bad B movie. You know? And that's kind of, and I had fun making it, man. And that was one I did.
But a cool B movie, it's not music.
No,
it's got a swagger.
Yeah, well, I kind of love some music that's on the border of music, if it's in the right context.
Look, you remember, I know that's not what you made, but you remember that period where lounge music was hip for a minute. The people who knew how to pick that, great music, man.
Oh, absolutely.
But James Last at his best. I'm really interested in the industrial side of...
Yep.
I've always been interested in people having a fair go or not and how things change. But and you're of a vintage, so around this time is kind of when the music industry started changing. How did it affect you, and kind of what are the key things you had to learn?
I think initially I felt like it made it easier.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to print as many posters as I used to.
And
all
huge
that stuff.
cost.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's, I really thought, I was hoping that the download model would be the one that happened.
Yeah.
And streaming kind of threw that out the window, really.
Yeah.
I still don't think that Spotify, etc., is the final model for streaming. Ownership of music is an important thing.
I've got you. It's not something just rushing through a pipe past you.
It's like you have to invest in it.
Yeah.
And I think if there is a streaming model that's fair, it's the movie industry.
Yeah.
right? Netflix, because they're not just a ticket clipper.
Yeah.
They create content. They
Yeah.
pay people to make things.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like a record company used to be, or a movie house, whatever.
The only problem is, and I'm right there with you, is that we need 5 Netflixes.
That's
like
right.
the record companies, and even then they were like a whatever
That's
a 5
right.
monopoly is.
Well, you've got Amazon and, there are others.
No, there are. They're not. They're not.
I just
doing-
don't think Spotify's sustainable.
Music isn't such a kind of central entertainment thing for youth these days.
No. You remember this, right? When
Yeah.
a new record came out and one of your friends could afford to buy it,
Yeah.
and everyone went to their house to listen to it,
Yeah.
and you'd all sit there and listen to the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
And how cool that was.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, that's like all those midnight releases, where
Yeah.
people would queue up at record
Yeah.
stores. It's like, I don't want to live in the past in any way, but I would love to see a world where all art and music was consumed with some excitement and not just something you put on in the background while you do the vacuuming.
It has been heartening seeing, young people return back to vinyl, and they
Absolutely.
I see lots of young women in real groovy and stuff now. That was unheard of about 10 years ago. Again, there's a lot to this, like how people spend money, like because everything, or a lot of things are expected to be free or a low subscription these days. The other thing is kind of moving into the live performance thing, and I know this wouldn't affect, presumably your audience will be older, but that demographic now, which is why things like Rhythm and Vines are so big.
Yeah.
They're not buying CDs and so on every week now like we did. So they have one big, like, basically pinger blowout at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Where they buy a big ticket.
Which sounds
sounds
fair until you realise that back in
I'm
the
not
day,
an advocate
people
for it.
used to do that and buy the records.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's not a new thing to have festivals.
No, but what they've done. I'm actually going to say a line that is kind of commercially sensitive, but someone involved with Rhythm and Helps or Vines said to me that the model now these days, they work out what their punters have to spend. And unlike the model of old, he described it as we figure out how to have them upside down by their trouser legs on the last day and shake the last 2 coins out of them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. It's business, man. It's like, I get that.
Yeah.
Just,
What kind?
Oh, Jesus.
What kind of fuckery is this?
Oh, that's right. So that's...
What kind of fuckery is this?
Yeah.
God, that sums up the
So I think that's first question for negotiating 2020, and then I haven't labelled these, but I think the second one. So that's the general, what is going on. The second one is
What kind of fuckery are we?
what the fuck are you want? But then you need to be kind of self-reflexive, which is either that button or that button, which is kind of like diffusing a bomb, because it's either going to go really well, or it's going to be like
green
a
or another
car
shade
horn
of
or
green?
something.
What kind of fuckery are you?
Which is what you're pondering with the title of your album in a really positive way.
Exactly.
And that wasn't that. They talk about happy accidents with live performances. That first one wasn't a setup. What a masterful end.
It is.
Any spare tickets? That'd be a fucking miracle.
If you want tickets to the shows, they're all at my website, which is just darrenwatson.com. That's 2 R's and an E. There's millions of ways of spelling it. My Bandcamp address is just music.darrenwatson.com.
Okay.
So it's easy. The shows are everywhere.
The Getting Sober for the End of the World tour with Darren Watson starts off at San Fran Bathhouse. Is it still that?
No, they've taken out the bathhouse.
Excuse
it's
me,
just
sorry.
San Fran now, mate.
I used to be a well-oiled machine. First of October. Friday, 2nd of October, you're in Palmerston. Saturday, 3rd of October, you're at the Fourth Hall Theatre, New Plymouth. Thursday, 8th of October, Paisley Stage, Napier. The main thing is people know you're coming through the centres.
Yeah, totally.
Friday, 9th of October, Biddy Milligan's in Hamilton. Saturday, 10th of October, the Wine Cellar in Auckland. Nice, perfect, intimate venue.
Great
Thursday, 15th of October, Dog with Two Tails in Dunedin. Friday, 16th of October, 12 Bar in Christchurch, nearly there. Saturday, 24th of October, you're at the Wellington Folk Festival.
Yep.
And the same thing on the Sunday. And then you're at a freaking village hall in Paikok for the end.
Paikakariki, man.
What a
That's
nice way to
great
end.
gig.
So do people, where do they get tickets from? The website?
Just basically from my website. If they just click on, it just says get tickets. And thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
That was awesome.